Rob, welcome to Camera Conversations, optimized by Pure Sport. We were almost firing on all cylinders before we even started
We
there.
were, yeah, easy to do, yeah.
One of the things I want to start with is, after your own deep exploration of the world of self-development,
Yes.
what have you learned is the best place for us to start?
Well, I guess there's two approaches. One you can, if we took the metaphor of a swimming pool, one is you can go in at the shallow end and walk to the deep end, or the other one is you jump in at the deep end, go underwater for a bit and then come up. And my view is that you're actually better to jump in at the deep end. You get where you want to get to much faster that way. It's just that jumping in at the deep end tends to conflict with a lot of what you currently believe.
And that's potentially challenging because it's intimidating to do something that's against our existing belief system.
Yeah, well, typically most people are trying to create change whilst hanging on to their belief system and their thought system. And actually, when we understand how the mind works, we recognize that actually to create the changes we want, we've got to fundamentally change the way we think. So it's just that when you challenge that, there tends to be a bit of defense. People like to hang on to what they currently believe. It's quite scary to have your beliefs completely disrupted.
Yes, because to shake the foundations of who we are is to shake our very reality of how we perceive ourselves too.
Well, yeah, and at an ultimate level, and maybe we'll get into this, maybe we won't, but we conventional wisdom says you need to become more, and you need to grow and develop, and people are striving to become something. And actually, when you get to the ultimate truth, the recognition that you are nothing, that you are also everything. You're pure. You're literally pure potential. But it's in complete conflict to our education system. We're educated out of an understanding of who we are.
I think when we use language like that, Rob, the listeners are going to have the patience and the desire, because the fact that I'm so excited to have you on the show. But let's guide them on that journey to how they can understand some of that terminology that you've just shared there, that limitless potential, that abundant nature.
Yes.
And maybe join some of those dots. And while I've been a big fan of your work since I was introduced by Fergus and Adam in the webinar that we did together, I took a lot from. There's a lot for me to still learn as well.
Yes.
And I'm on that journey too.
Sure.
And people listening will be at different parts of that journey.
Of course, yeah. So do you want me to see if I can unpack that in a way that might resonate with?
Yeah.
I appreciate that's right into the deep end.
Any exercises you think we can do as well, and
Sure.
and I can join in those too.
Well, one of the simplest ways is to look at our experience, because most people are out in the world trying to change their experience, whether it's experience of their own body or experience of their world or their bank account or whatever it is. But if we look at our experience of the world, at first glance, it appears to be a gazillion and one things. And then if we track back and take a more contextual perspective, our physical world is made up of what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Sight, sound, smells, tastes, and textures. Take our five senses away, and we take our physical world away. And then we might call that our outer world experience, what we perceive with our senses. And then we've got our inner world experience, thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. And at a contextual level, is there ever any more to our life than that? No, that's it. And so we're aware of our experience, we're aware of our thoughts, we're aware of our feelings, we're aware of our body and our sensations, and we're aware of what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. So if we're aware of all that, who or what is it that's aware? And that's where we come to the recognition that actually our true nature is pure awareness prior to form. And our nature is to express from that formlessness into form. That's our nature, and we do that in the mind.
How would you help somebody to recognize this concept of awareness then? How would we join the dots between what you've explained there, that our senses are how we interpret what's going on around us?
Yes.
But ultimately we are purely just ourselves.
We're pure awareness. And the paradox with all of this is we want to grasp it in the mind before we accept it, and the mind can't grasp it because it's on the wrong side of the fence. The mind is projecting out the way, awareness is extending. So the challenge is we can't grasp it from the mind, but we can understand it through exercise of self-recognition. But even that is an intellectual exercise. We say, well, I'm aware of my entire experience, so what is it that's aware? And we arrive at that blank. We can't answer. The mind wants to try and answer that question, but if we sit with it, there's just no answer.
It hasn't got the logical words to form that make it make sense.
No, our true nature is preconceptual. Even the word awareness is just a label that we use for or consciousness or whatever label you might want to use. It's just a a label for convenience, but really we're formless. And I think most people live with an understanding that there's so much more to us than just this meat suit wandering around in a physical world. That's ultimately what's driving this desire to express. But yeah, we can't grasp it in the mind, and that's the challenge.
That's the challenge. And I guess one of the things that I think about when I think about your teachings and your insights is that we have to have some fundamental understanding in place before we can proceed and maybe make it actionable and impactful in somebody's life and their health, their wealth, their abundance, whatever that looks like. What would be a good place for us to start to maybe give some groundings to this understanding?
We don't need to understand our true nature at all. We can operate, as so much of the advice in the world does, just from the level of mind, conventional mindset. The challenge with that is we're then using a concept to fight a concept, and we end up being at war with ourselves because we've overlooked ourselves in the process. But we don't need to recognize ourselves. But the other thing is that when you ask somebody what their why is for any activity, and you keep asking them what their why is, ultimately it's about happiness. Ultimately, they say, no, it's not about happiness. It's about X, Y, and Z. And you keep asking why, and it's about, they want peace and happiness. Well, why does everybody really want that more than anything? Because that's our nature. Everyone's trying to come home to themselves. So for as long as we ignore our true nature as awareness, there's never enough cars in the driveway or money in the bank or houses or activity or relationships or lovers or whatever. There's never enough to give us in the world to give us the wholeness that everyone seeks, because that's who we are. And then our experience is a tiny fragment of ourselves. So it makes sense to start at source, recognize you're already whole and complete, fulfilled, you're not broken, you're worthy, you're loved, and then go out and extend from there.
It's a positive place to start as well, isn't it? Because I think many people start with preconceptions about, I'm not enough as I am. I need this to feel complete.
Yes.
I'll be happy when.
Exactly,
And I think the example you gave there around the cars, the money, the lifestyle.
Yeah.
There's an element of it being an unteachable lesson. Sometimes people need to experience it in order to appreciate it.
Yes.
So, for example, if somebody very wealthy on a podcast says, I wasn't happier when I had £1 million in the bank than when I had £1 in the bank, or when I got the Ferrari, I was happy for a fraction and I wasn't happy after that. The person listening to that person on the podcast says, boo-hoo, poor you.
Yeah.
Wait till I get the Ferrari.
Absolutely.
I'll be happy.
Yes.
It'll be different for me.
Yes.
So there are elements of having to satisfy material desires to find out that it's not necessarily the be-all and the end-all.
Absolutely, yes. And we can, without having any awareness of ourselves, we can absolutely go out in the world and through the mind, we can create massive wealth and abundance, and but have no real understanding of how we've done that. And you're right. Sometimes we have to exhaust the objective success to realize actually it's just still lacking. That was my journey. At one time, I had I had a great business and I had the chocolate box lifestyle, the big detached house, an acre and a half of garden, nice cars. To the outside world, Rob Begg, what a lucky guy, he's got it. But I was miserable, and it was all about self-worth. It was all about I'm not yet enough, and playing that game, that terrible game that you can never win, comparison syndrome. Compare yourself to
keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and you can't win that game. I had a client a few years ago who was a member of a yacht club down south, and he had a friend who was unhappy that he didn't have the biggest yacht in the yacht club. And then he sold his business and he bought a big yacht, and he was delighted for 2 years until someone came along with a bigger yacht. And then it was like, well, his happiness was shattered. And to think that we are placing our happiness on the car in the drive or on the material possessions, on what's always changing and moving, it's kind of mad. Whereas who we are essentially is changeless, experiencing change.
And that is a positive carrot, despite a perhaps dispiriting initial reaction to that. So, for example, if you tell somebody to relinquish their material desires or their desire for more status or more recognition, they might think, oh, well, why should I work at all then? Why should I push myself at all? Why should I extend myself? Why should I put in effort? Or why should I attempt to achieve? Should I just sit back and take the UBI and and live on the state, as many people in the UK are now doing as well? They're opting out altogether. And the kind of people that listen to podcasts like this one aren't in that bracket. But that carrot that you're enough as you are. You can explore your limitless potential without necessarily being driven by a fear of keeping up with the Joneses or being able to flex on Instagram or put up that post that makes you feel great for that initial dopamine of the likes coming in or the congratulations coming in when you exited your business for 7 figures. I'm sure people were like, oh, Rob, well done. But if that doesn't really fill up your cup, then we need to look deeper. These days, it feels like every brand is shouting about how supplements are the answer to everything and all your problems. Before you jump on the latest wellness trend, it's worth remembering the foundations and basics come first. Hydration, good nutrition, rest, movement are the real keys. When you do decide to supplement, however, what you choose really does matter. You know I'm a big fan of removing toxins and unnecessary things from your lifestyle, and I ensure that my supplements are free from additives, artificial flavors, and any unnecessary, dirty, toxic fillers. Personally, having seen many professional athletes and top performers utilize their products, I decided to give Pure Sport supplements a go. Their products are built on science-backed information, minimal ingredients, and they do exactly what they're meant to. Whether it's their best-selling ultra electrolytes to keep you hydrated and energized, their deep magnesium to support with quality sleep, or even their natural testosterone-boosting Tonka Ali, I trust that what they make is developed to care for me and my body. Explore the full range of Pure Sport supplements at the link in the show notes, puresport.co, and use the code CAMBRO10 for 10% off.
I'm an advocate. What I teach is foundation of who you are, and then have all the objective success that you want. Because when you know who you are, there's less resistance to it. Ego, which is just the term for the belief that I am finite, separate, and limited. That's just ego's not a thing. It's just a belief, a thought. But that's resistance to love and to life and to abundance. And so, therefore, when we don't know who we are, the only way to get what we want is through striving and effort and action. And then we're using all of our doing as a permission slip for accepting something new. And it's the acceptance of something new that creates the outcome. It's not the doing. So I'm a fan of both. Be happy and fulfilled as a starter, because that's what you want more than anything. And then go out and create as much wealth and abundance and fun as you want.
But it comes from that positive position, not a place of lack or scarcity or necessity.
Yes.
It's coming from the foundations of, as you are just now, everything's great, and the downstream effects will flow based on just you exploring your life.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between, well, why do you want that car? Well, so that I can feel a bit better about myself, or so that the neighbors will approve of me, versus why do you want that car? I just love it. Like, there's no why for love. And so when we're coming at, oh, I'd love that house, or I'd love that car, or I'd love that to create this business or this podcast, just because I love the idea, like, that's so much more liberating, and it's so we move faster in the world as a result.
Yeah, the term love's interesting because many people immediately think like they love their spouse or they love their family, but your definition of love there's slightly different, isn't it?
Yeah, love is just another name for awareness or consciousness. As Rupert Spira, who's a non-dual teacher, one of my mentors, he says love is just a street name for God.
But not in a religious sense, which is again challenging because so many of these words have an immediate connotation that we jump to.
Absolutely,
but we're going to strip that back today.
Yes, yeah. When I talk about God, it's not in a religious construct, but yeah, love is essentially who we are, and then love's nature is to express. So when we're at home with ourselves, we express more abundantly. We have more freedom to express. We're not resisting love by seeking it. So that's the paradox.
Yeah. There was an exercise we did on the first webinar I attended where you asked me to go back to being a newborn baby.
Yes.
Can we do that just now, Rob?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Let me just recollect it. Yeah. So if you're listening for listeners, it might find it, provided they're not driving or operating machinery, might find it helpful to close their eyes and just sit and take a moment and imagine you're brand new into the world. Newborn baby, brand new into the world. And you've therefore got no ability to access memory or labels or narratives, no memories of the past. You're brand new. And if someone was to ask you, what's the first thing you could tell them about yourself as this brand new baby in the world with no memory, what would the answer be?
And when I first did this exercise, Rob, the thing that came up was, I'm here, I'm present.
Yeah.
And I think you said to me that you are on the right lines. It's I am.
I am, and presence is another name for who we are. Presence, awareness, consciousness, love, God. Now, I like the word presence because I think of it as pre-senses.
Yes,
We are prior to everything that we perceive with our senses.
because what that allowed you to then teach onto me and the others on the call and the people listening today was that many of us make decisions or judgments or assessments based on memory, data, and the past.
Yes,
And that's very limiting, which you are trying to remove limitations. If I just am,
yes,
then it allows me a clean slate
yes,
to interpret, enjoy, and explore without the limitations that come from, oh, but the last person that asked me to come in and coach their sales team did this, so I
Yeah.
need to do this.
yes.
It allows you to be
Blank
open.
canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not hamstrung by the past then when we recognize that we're pure awareness, present, literally brand new in every moment. Then we can free ourselves up to be a conscious creator of what we would love rather than being hamstrung by memories and beliefs. And our world is held together by labels and narratives. Like what is that water bottle without labels? If we take all the labels away from that, the size, shape, the color, all that we know of it, then all we're left with is pure awareness.
Yes,
So
we've stripped it back.
we've stripped it back, and our world is held in the mind based on our thinking.
And removing that is a good thing.
Well, no, I mean, I'm very happy to know that that's a water bottle and all the rest of it. It's not about removing anything really. In fact, it's really the opposite. It's more about choosing our preferences. Most people are trying to remove a situation from their life. So that, maybe they wake up in January the 1st and they've had a really great Christmas and think, oh, I'm out of shape, I'm going to join the gym. So they're trying to remove what they don't want. Whereas it's really that just gives our awareness to the unwanted. And guess what happens when we give our awareness to what we don't want? We create more of it in our experience. So it's really not about getting rid of anything. It's about, choose my preferences.
Yes, and you were giving an example for Hit Record, which was really helpful around weight loss and nutrition. And
Yes.
many of the people that listen to the podcast are into their health and their fitness. We work with Pure Sport and people are
Yes.
interested in that side of things. How would you describe that to the listener in terms of how unhelpful it can be to maybe go down the traditional route of advice?
Well, it's a resistance-based approach, and there's nothing wrong with it per se, but what a lot of people can find is that, they take 2 steps forward and then 1 3/4 steps backwards, or, they have a good run and then a bad run, and it's like, oh, why can't I shift
Yo-yo
this?
dieting's a term, isn't it?
Yeah, and yo-yo business is common too. So, because they're trying to affect the change at the level of doing, the level of the mind. So, the first expression of I am being a blank canvas, is identity. So, who do I say that I am? And it's who do I say that I am? Who am I conscious of being? We're human beings, not human doings. Who am I conscious of being that then gets expressed? So the challenge is that if I'm looking in the mirror and I'm out of shape, telling myself that I am strong, fit, and healthy and lean and in great shape, that makes no sense when I'm looking at an image that's not reflecting that. But that's the problem when we're not aware of who we are and how the mind works. Then we take our cues from the world and we think from the world. And nothing has any meaning in and of itself. When people look at their bank account, the number on your bank account, it has no meaning whatsoever. We add the meaning in the mind. And
Yes.
people typically, they race forward in their mind and they look at the bank account and go, oh, that means this. And then they're moved to do something, usually from fear. If I don't do something, I'm not going to get what I do want, or I'm going to get what I don't want. Most people are trying to create change in their life from fear, not from love.
Yes. So in the same way, if somebody said to somebody who was overweight and wanted to lose weight, or said they wanted to lose weight, if they said to them, you should track your calories and go to the gym 3 times a week.
Yeah.
That is practical advice.
Yeah.
But it's not on the level that would make a significant change in their identity and who they see themselves as and who they will become.
Well, yeah, they might. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that advice, and I'm never about making anything wrong. But and they might take that advice, and the following of that advice and the doing of that advice might lead them to the outcome. But it's their story around the advice that matters. So they go to the gym and they come back from the gym and they go, "Had a great session at the gym. I've got this new personal trainer. I really like him. I think I'm really going to get results with him, and I've got this plan and I really like it." And so it's that narrative that then creates the outcome, versus coming back from the gym and going, "Oh, that was hard work. I don't know if this is going to work," and then tell another story. And
I can't see myself sticking to this.
yeah, and in every moment of now, we're literally, there are infinite storylines that we can go down, and they create our experience.
How did you feel about the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
I read it a long time ago, and as I remember it, as a lot of it was about focus on habits, but as I remember, there was quite a
section on identity.
Yeah. But I think as I recall it, and I could be out of date in terms of my recollection, it wasn't coming at identity from the awareness of our true nature.
It was coming from behaviours, routines, and habits forming your identity.
Yes.
And while I think it may achieve the outcome that we want, because it's doing what you're talking about and you're recommending, but just the other way round.
Yes.
And some people may stumble into awareness through that.
Yes.
But he talked a lot about the smoking example, which is quite an easy way to do it, in the same way as losing weight. If you are, quote unquote, quitting cigarettes, and somebody offers you a cigarette, you don't say, "I'm trying to quit smoking." You say, "I'm not a smoker."
Yes. Yeah.
And over time, that becomes your awareness, your reality, and your behaviors and routines and habits all fall into alignment with that down the line.
Yes.
However, those that say, "I'm trying to quit smoking," and then they have a couple of pints and their inhibitions drop and they're in the smoking area with a dart in the right hand, that is somebody that hasn't shifted on the internal level to being a non-smoker.
Yes. Yes. They're identified as a smoker who's trying to give up, trying to quit, rather than identified as a non-smoker.
And the person that hires the PT but isn't sure it's going to work, or is worried that I always have a cheat meal on a Friday and I can never say no to my husband getting a Chinese takeaway for us.
Yeah.
They are sabotaging themselves before they're even out the gate.
Yeah, because it's a resistance game. It's like trying to resist, trying to get rid of what we don't want, trying to deny ourselves what our identity is actually, our identity is moving us towards. So
one of the phrases I wrote down was, "Who do I say that I am?" Because that then plays out in our identity and our outcomes.
Yes.
How would you help somebody shape who they say they are?
Well, at the highest level, what do people? There's three buckets, if you like: health, wealth, relationships, health, wealth, love. So at the highest level, we are health, wealth, abundance, love, absent of lack. And then the first expression of that in the mind is healthy, wealthy, loved. Those are expressions of that health, wealth, and love. And then it's well, how do you want to experience yourself? Self being I am awareness. How would I love to experience myself? Because healthy is subjective, wealthy is subjective. Where's the dividing line between, well, I'm poor and I'm rich? Well, there isn't one. There's no dividing lines. Full stop. we just put them there in the mind. So I would always ask the question, how would I love to experience myself? I think it's one of the most authentic questions we can ask.
How would I love to experience myself?
Yeah. And then make some choices, start to get some clarity around that. I'd love to be this weight. I'd love to be in this kind of relationship. I'd love to live here. It's all about experiencing ourselves.
Yeah. And I think if we have that initial base question, we can set out our intentions and aims that come off the back of that.
Yes.
And for me, when I look at your work, and I know the listeners are battling to keep up and make sure that they can take something from this, because I genuinely swear you will. Asking a question like that can help us get back to the awareness, which is where we must start, and set out that idealized version of ourselves in a healthy, happy form before we even start thinking about what I must do to be that.
Yeah. One of the exercises I run with clients is I talk about basketballs and marbles.
Okay.
So I say, if I had 100 marbles in my hand, Colin, and I threw them at you, how many might you catch?
A handful.
Yeah, a handful. Whereas if I lobbed a basketball at you, what's the likelihood you'd catch it? Pretty high. So states of consciousness are like basketballs. I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm loved. That's like a basketball. We just land that with ourselves. And then the marbles are the expressions of that. And what most people are trying to do is they're trying to catch the marbles. And they're trying to work bottom up. It's like, if I can do this and I can do this and I can have this and I can get this, then I'll be wealthy and healthy and loved. Well, why not start with the basketball and then see how that expresses in your life?
Yes, that really helpful analogy, because the marbles are perhaps somebody saying, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. I'm going to
Yeah.
post on LinkedIn 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I'm going to send 50 cold DMs to potential clients.
Yeah.
Whereas a basketball in that scenario would be, I am healthy, happy, wealthy.
Yeah. And then see how how then you're then moved to express that. Because most people are doing, well, I need to do 50 social media messages or the X, Y, and Z. And that's coming from, I'm not yet who I want to be. And so most people just put the Christmas tree up from one year to the next. It's like, well, life's not much different. I've tried really hard. I've strived really hard. I've exhausted myself, but the needle hasn't moved. And that's because the identity is driving everything. And if we're coming at it from lack and we're like, oh, I've not got what I want, we just perpetuate that. And then back to the earlier part of this conversation, it just gets more and more painful. And then at some stage we surrender to, oh, there must be another way. There must be something more, something that I'm missing.
Yeah, there's a concept called the raging beta paradox, where if you're just coasting along and life's not great, but it's not good, you probably won't make a change. So you're in a relationship, but you don't really love each other. But she doesn't hit you, he doesn't hit you. You don't scream at each other every single night, but you're not in love.
Yes.
Or you're in a job, you're earning 50k and it's enough to pay your bills, but you can't go on the holidays you want to go on, or you can't buy the gift from your mum for Christmas that you've always wanted to and you've always told yourself, or you can't maybe extend yourself in a way that you want to in terms of maybe putting away a little bit more into your stocks and shares or your pension. But it's too risky for you to leave the job.
Yes.
You would almost be better to get sacked from that job and things be so bad that you have to go and do something else, or you'd be so bad, it would be better that your partner cheated on you, because then it would be so bad you have to leave.
Yeah.
So what you're mentioning there is that people will toy around with catching the marbles for a long period of time until they either perhaps give up, or they recognize that they need to catch the basketball and have more of their identity from one of these core pillars or tenets.
Yeah. I believe that life is always supporting us. Life itself is always supporting us to come into greater recognition of ourselves, and it's always showing us where we're not free. We're always looking in the mirror of our own consciousness, and our nature is to express. Our nature is to expand and grow and create. We're creators. The idea is that we become conscious creators rather than non-conscious ones.
Yes.
And I think life is always supporting us to come into greater understanding of ourselves. And often that's just, we get, depression would be one example of life, of our significant resistance to life.
So our body and our mind is reacting to the fact that life isn't how it should be? Is it giving us a warning?
So our we're going down rabbit holes. So
let's do it, Rob. I'm
so
excited.
our body is in the mind. Our entire life experience takes place in the mind. Most people think the mind's in their head, but our body is in the mind, as is our physical experience. And so we have feelings are like an emotional sat nav. But problem with the Western world is we're educated to judge feelings as good or bad. So when we're not feeling as we want to feel, we want to do something to alleviate that feeling, whether it's an ice bath or go to the gym or whatever, trying to get rid of a feeling, which is really we're just suppressing ourselves. So we can think thoughts that are in harmony with how we would love to experience ourselves. And then we go down that road and we start to experience ourselves in the physical world in accordance with that. And then we can think thoughts that are in conflict with how we want to experience ourselves, like, oh, I've not got enough money, I've never got enough time, business is hard, I'm out of shape. That all feels pretty horrible as a way of thinking. And we feel the contraction of that. And the idea is that feeling is designed to support us to turn our thinking around. Not when you're on a journey in the car, if you take a wrong turning, you don't turn the sat nav off because it chimes in. You turn the car around and the feelings follow. But we're educated to get rid of our feelings, go to the doctor, get antidepressants, suppress those bad feelings, and then they just never leave. If you suppress anxiety, you never get rid of it.
Yes. There's lots of things going off in my mind, but the first and foremost is that your body is giving you an indication, your mind and your body is giving you an indication there that you need to change course.
Yes.
But sometimes we try to change course by suppressing that feeling rather than changing that feeling or changing that perception of that feeling.
Yes. Yeah, and then we can identify with our feelings. I said to someone a couple of years ago, I said, she was talking about all the problems she had at work and with her clients, and everything was a problem, and her husband was a problem. I said, "Who are you without your problems?" And she just went silent. She said, "I've never given any thought to that." She said, "I've just spent the last 20 years trying to get rid of all my problems, but telling a story about the problems, and then of course you just perpetuate more of what you give your awareness to, and that who we are is an unconditional yes to everything. Love is that's the thing. We're unconditional love. So I've never got any money. Business is hard. Well, love just goes yes, yes, yes. But it doesn't feel very good because love is trying to support us to recognize that we're infinite and we're free. We're completely free.
A lot of that freedom piece excites me because it means that we explore the potential that we have, which in your world is limitless potential.
Yes.
And many of the people that you coach, and I've read the testimonials and I've spoken to Fergus, to Adam, other people that joined us on the call, were speaking about the tangible results that have come off the back of coming from a place of love and abundance.
Yes.
And I think with buzzwords in the mainstream, or at least in the podcast sphere, like manifestation, I think there's some discussion around what you're doing, but non-duality is another level. It's beyond that for me.
Yeah, I mean, manifestation is our nature as consciousness, as love, is to manifest. Everything's, even if people say I'm not into manifestation, well, they are, because our human experience is manifested. Everything's manifested. It's just that it's been taken as a word as to use to
describe a particular approach.
Yeah, and to sell to people's wanting to alleviate the sense of lack.
Yes.
Without sufficient context, it's like you as a separate self can do this and you'll manifest. But for most people, they read the books, or they fall for the latest promise on Instagram for here's the greatest book on manifesting, and it's another book that doesn't work out. I'm really coming from the recognition of our true nature, where we find the peace that we really want, and then and then our desires are typically much more authentic.
Yes, they're not influenced by the keeping up with the Joneses phrase that I used, or the fact that Jamie that I went to school with got an RS3 this year, or Sarah that I used to work with is now living in Dubai in a penthouse.
Yeah.
I want that. If we can go back to our true self, then we might recognize that we might want elements of that, but we don't want exactly that.
Yes, because wouldn't it be a sorry world if we all wanted the same things? And we're all individualized expressions of the one consciousness. We all have our own unique, at a contextual level, healthy, wealthy, abundant, but individually, we're all individual expressions of the one. And it's like the more we're aware of ourselves, the more authentic and aligned we can be, and the easier life flows. That when people talk about flow, like it's something to go and do. Again, it's something to go and do. Flow is just our nature. And when we're in, everyone's had periods where they've just been in flow for a day, and like synchronicities happen and things seem to just unfold, and coincidences and all the rest of it. It's just, we're allowing ourselves to express.
Have you ever rubbed beef fat on your face? Sounds crazy, but that's exactly what I've been doing since January. Those that know me well know that I'm all about removing toxins from my life. Things like getting a filter for my tap water, not eating ultra-processed foods in my diet, even spraying aftershave on my clothes rather than on my skin. And that got me thinking, if I'm not spraying aftershave on my skin because of it disrupting my hormones, what on earth am I putting on when it comes to a moisturizer? So when my good friend Adam Ash and previous guest on the podcast launched No Tox, it was a no-brainer. It's made from all natural ingredients, mainly from raw honey and beef tallow, and my skin has never looked better. If you want to benefit from the tallow glow and remove toxins from your life, then hit the link in the show notes to notoxskincare.co and use the code Colin15 for 15% off. What kind of examples do you have that from your client work in terms of somebody experiencing an inflow day, and maybe what did they do beforehand that might have unlocked that flow?
Well, I guess it's the coming back home to oneself, to that present moment, and then just choosing our assumptions and our narratives. But when we're really present to life rather than resisting now, the ego is resistance to life, and all life is now. The ego is always it's the promise of fulfillment in the future. Like when I've had something to eat, when I've had a holiday, when it's been the weekend, it's always the next moment. But the more we're present to life, from the recognition that life is love and abundance, and it's seeking expression through us, and really there's no doing to be done other than get out of the way. But you asked for some examples, and there's lot of synchronicities in terms of, I've got clients in the US who he's just bought a boat, and he said historically, he said he would never have allowed himself to buy the boat because he had a story running about not having time freedom and all the rest of it. And he's just started to embody the identity of someone who's free and loving life. And he's been moved to be aware of desires that he didn't even know he had. And he's bought a boat, and he said everything's fallen into, he had to have it shipped 2,500 miles and cross country. And then he said, and then I needed to find a boathouse, and boathouses at the marina, they're typically, and he said, I just told myself a story. It's all working out perfectly. And it's all just been seamless. And then someone showed up in his life looking for work, and he said, well, perfect timing. I've got work on the boat to be done. And when we just allow life to flow, it's synchronicities. And
a term that's springing to mind for me is an openness to experience and an openness for things to unfold as they will.
Yes.
A phrase that I think about sometimes is like, sometimes we grip really hard to the tiller.
Yeah.
And we try and muscle our way there.
Yes.
And I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm being critical, but I think there's times in my life where I've had to feel like I was in control. Otherwise, I would have spiraled, or I would have expressed myself in a way that wasn't helpful. Yes. So by channeling myself into my training, my nutrition, my hustle and my sales role, it helped me.
Yes.
But I recognize to go further and more effortlessly,
yes,
I must become before I just grind and one more rep, bro, or just sacrifice that little bit more from your social life so you can get more ripped or get more money in your job.
Yeah.
And I heard you give an example before that one of your clients was looking over a piece of land that he lived next to.
Yes.
And there was 2 old trucks sat in the land.
Oh, yeah.
And he was thinking to himself that, oh, they're out of use. I'd love to buy those. They look really interesting.
Yeah.
And then a short time later, he was speaking to his neighbour who owned the land.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he said, oh, I see you've got those 2 trucks. And he said, actually, they're a bit of a nuisance for me. Would you like to buy them?
Yeah.
And he actually quoted the exact same price, like $250 each for that. And I appreciate people listening will be like, that sounds bonkers.
Yeah.
But these things happen over and over and over again. And without going Neil deGrasse Tyson, there's elements of quantum physics which actually relate to that as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so fascinating, and it's a great rabbit hole to go down. But if you go to sleep tonight and have a dream, you can have a really vivid dream where you can be on the streets of Paris or New York or whatever, vivid dream, or a nightmare, and you wake up in the morning, you think, wow, that was such a vivid dream, but you never doubt that it went on within your own mind. You've been lying in your bed all along. You never doubt that dream went on within your mind, but it was so vivid and real, and you could taste the coffee and you could smell the air and all of that stuff.
I had a fight in my dream last night.
Did you?
It was really unpleasant.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it all morning.
Right. Yes.
But I knew it was I appreciated it wasn't my reality.
And if we come up a layer, that's what's going on here. This is all a dream within our own mind, the mind of awareness. But that's an impossible concept to grasp, although you can go out to the science now, and science is very clear. One of my favorite scientists, Donald Hoffman, who's a leading neuroscientist, he says, I've spent my entire life being a neuroscientist. And he said, I now know that I've been wrong for most of it, and neurons don't exist without our consciousness of them. There's no physical world in the way that there appears to be. But that's a bit of a stretch. It's a very real experience.
So if we acknowledge that, and that gentleman was thinking about, I would quite like to buy those vehicles at some point, somebody listening could consider how they would love to experience themselves and what they might like to have or experience down the line. If that is materially, if that's relationally, if that's with regards to their health, they can start there.
Yes.
And it may come to pass.
Well, yeah, it's by the mind works by law, not by chance. So it's all about our identity and our acceptance. So he was very light touch about it. He lived on a farm, and he had those 2 trucks in the farmer's field. And I think he'd approached the farmer before to try and buy them. And the farmer had said no, and he said, I'd really love to buy those trucks, but he wasn't attached to it. That's the thing. It's like when we get attached, we swing on this pendulum between positive and negative attachment. And he just said, I'd love to buy those trucks, and I'd love to pay $500 for them as restoration projects for the love of it. And as you say, I don't know how long it was later, not that long, farmer came by and said, I want those trucks out my field, would you buy them? And our goals and our vision and our desires, it's just, am I willing to stay true to them? Because most people don't make decisions. How many of us went to school and were educated about decisions? Like, what are they? What is a decision? But nobody I've met.
No, we're not educated in that way.
Not
In
at all.
fact, many of the things that we're taught are directly in contrast to what we're speaking about. So, success should be caused by strife, or we must work harder to achieve what we want.
Yes.
And I was speaking about sometimes when I've felt like I'm gripping the tiller to try and steer myself through the storm. That's not necessarily helpful if I want to really have the type of life that I want to experience in reality.
Yes. One of the challenges is if we've spent however many decades building a business and striving really hard, and we've created a lot of success, we validate ourselves then on our hard work. Our self-worth is to some degree based upon how hard we've worked.
Yeah.
So try and tell someone who's been on a 40-year journey to build a business and create a lot of success that actually it wasn't their hard work that created their success. They wouldn't want to know.
Yes, because we live in a meritocracy. So to say that it wasn't due to their hard work would take away from some of their accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's challenging, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course, their experience has been that it's been hard work, but actually what's created it was their focus on their focus, and then they had a belief that hard work was necessary, and so therefore it was.
Yes. So I was talking to Adam ahead of today because he was one of the people that really strongly encouraged me to have this conversation. And we're speaking about No Talks, and we were speaking about how hard he's worked to get it off the ground as a startup, not take any external investment, battle it out with the tax environment in the UK and the regulatory environment in the UK. And we were speaking about his greatest successes come from when he works hard on producing lots of advertisements for paid ads for Facebook, Google, a little bit of TikTok as well. And he was saying that one of his challenges when he speaks, and you and him push back and forth to try and get to the crux of the matter, is that if he works hard and produces lots of adverts, the results for the business are better.
Yes.
But he appreciates that he must do it from a place of love and abundance, that the more eyeballs and people see the product, the more we'll benefit from something that's not got toxins in it that can heal eczema or dry skin or positions. So there's a challenge there in terms of the result. Yeah,
there's a dance. And of course, it's never really what we're doing with the advertising and all the rest of it that's creating the result. It's our belief that what we're doing is going to create the result.
Yes. I believe that if I do lots of adverts and work really hard and find the right hook and I post them enough, I will get more sales.
Yes. And it's the conviction. So one of the examples I use is if I wake up in the morning and I think, right, I need to get my sales to a certain level before the end of the month. I go, right, so there's maybe a fear that I'm not going to hit the target. And so I'll go out and make 10 sales calls today or 10 sales appointments. And I come home and I go, I made 10 sales calls today. I'm definitely going to get a couple of sales out of that. It was nothing to do with the 10 sales calls, and it was everything to do with your new story.
The story shapes the reality.
Yes.
And again, I think it is really challenging to hear, but how often do we experience that where we decide that that's going to be the case?
Yes. But the problem with that is it then straps you to being a human doing.
Okay.
Oh, now to get 2 sales, I need to do 10 sales calls. And then you go into a business and say, hey, if we make 10 sales calls, we get 2 sales. And then the whole business runs on that basis, and you get salespeople in and say, you got to make 10 sales calls a day.
To reach our quota.
If they don't believe it,
yes.
So you can get 100 salespeople in a room, exactly the same process, same capability, blah, 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 very different results. Because what we do doesn't generate our results.
We see that amongst top performers.
Yeah.
Those that have longevity. And if I look at my sales career, I always felt like I had a lot of conviction.
Yes.
Which is similar to what we're speaking about there.
Yeah, it's conviction.
For example, and you maybe tell me off for this, but I might quite enjoy that because I want to be pushed back on this. So in a business, I was always known as somebody that was really good at getting the door open and starting a conversation.
Right.
Getting a meeting, whether that's via LinkedIn or email or a cold call, or I started sending videos during the pandemic when we were locked down, doing little things, bits and pieces to get in the door and get that first discovery call.
Yep.
To the extent that if we got allocated new prospects, or more senior members of the team when I was more junior would say, that prospect's no use, I've tried everything to get in there. I would say from an egotistical perspective, I'm the guy that gets doors open.
Yep.
Give it to me.
Yes.
And it happened a couple of times with really big businesses when I was working in insurance, to the extent that people in London, what they were more senior, were like, Colin is really good at getting the door open, even on prospects that you can see on the Salesforce that we've worked for 4 years, 5 years, and we've sent them this and we've sent them this, and we met them at this networking event and they still didn't take a meeting, but Colin did this and he got a meeting.
Yes.
So my belief was that give me the hard prospect.
Yes.
And there was a bit of ego to that, like I'm the guy,
Sure,
a bit of a swagger, like I thought I was the boy, which was helpful to make me do the thing. But I had complete conviction that that
you were the boy, and therefore you were.
I was like, you can't get in there, give it to me.
Yes.
And there was a confident, arrogant element to that, but it shaped my reality and my outcomes.
Yes. Yes.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because it's our thinking that literally creates and shapes our world. Our world is literally made of thought, like literally made of thought. That makes no sense, but yes, your conviction. I remember when I started my business, I'll keep the story short, but
No, Rob, we're on a pod. You can explore here.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
So I'm going back a long time. How long am I going back? Well, more than 30 years, maybe 35 years. Well, I don't know, 40 years. And
you're aging yourself here, Rob.
Not quite 40 years, but close enough. And I didn't have any money, and I'd started this business. I'd had a bad experience with a business partner before, and my wife and I had been invited to a wedding. And at the time, I had a retail shop, and I couldn't afford to close the shop on a Saturday. Like, it just wasn't an option for me. So I phoned a friend, and I said, "Would you come and he was a sales guy, but in tech." I said, "Would you come and look after the shop for me on Saturday?" And he said, "Sure." So I said, "Come up through the week, I'll show you the ropes." And it was only a tiny shop. It was like half the size of this room. And I think at the time, I forget the numbers, but I was maybe doing $2,000 a week or something. And maybe about 800 quid of that was on a Saturday. So Saturday was a big day, and I needed him to take the money. I was flying by the seat of my pants, and rent and rates and all that. And so I went to the wedding, and I was away at the wedding, and I came back and I phoned him and I said, "How did you get on?" And he said, "Well, not as well as I could have done. Now that I know the ropes," he said, "I'd quite like to come back next Saturday and do a bit better." And I said, "Well, just tell me how you got on." I just wanted the number. And he said, "Well, I did $2,500. And I said, "No, that's not possible." And he said, "No, I'm telling you, I did $2,500. And I genuinely thought he was winding me up. And eventually he showed me the checks and showed me and that was it. And he said, "But if I come back next Saturday, I reckon we could do $7,000. And I said, there's just not a chance. Anyway, long story short, he came back the next Saturday. We closed up at 5:30, and we totaled up. We'd had the best time of our life. We'd had such a laugh, the banter, interacting with people, and we'd been so busy. I knew we'd been super busy. I'd never known anything like it, but I didn't know how much. And we totaled up at the end of the day, and we'd done 6,800 quid. And he went like that. I was delighted. I was actually like flabbergasted. He went
it's
like
expectation, isn't it?
He was like that. He was like, "Damn!" And then at that moment, there was still a bookcase that we'd left outside on the pavement. We hadn't that we were going to take in on the way out. And there's a guy appeared and put a tape measure over it. My friend Graham went out and said to the guy, "Do you have a car with you, sir?" And the guy said, "What do you mean have I got a car?" He said, "I'm just wondering whether you want to take it with you or whether you want it delivered." And he sold it to him for 250 quid. We did the $7,000. And I just bought on that day, when I didn't even really buy his belief, he was convicted that we could do $7,000. But from that day on, I borrowed his conviction, I borrowed his belief, and he then came to work for me. And we went from being, my business was doing about $2,000 a week. We went to doing more than £1 million a year within 10 months. And it was just conviction and belief and having a lot of fun. And when it started to get serious, when the fun went out of it, business became so tough. So, because
the story became, this is hard.
Well, when you're loving it, it flows. And then when you're in love with it, you're just in love with a story that's abundant and so on. And it was only, then the business grew, and then I turned around one day and had 35 people. And it was like, oh God, look at the size of the wage bill. And it was all just, my focus shifted to being in the wrong place. But the point is, what am I convicting myself in is really the key, because we're free thinkers. And most people they're convicted in their past. And they're using the past to tell a story. They're letting the story tell the story instead of standing on the throne as the storyteller.
Yes, and there's power in that.
All our power, yeah. Well, there's power regardless. It's just like, am I giving my power to my perceived limitations and what I can't have, or am I giving my power to what I would love?
Do you want to turn your LinkedIn into a selling machine rather than a time sink? Well, that's exactly what I'm helping you do with my step-by-step guide that shows you exactly how I built my brand, generated inbound leads, and turned my network into paying clients. It covers everything on how to write your profile, post structure and templates you can use, as well as outbound messages to your ideal clients to book meetings with them. This is the exact framework that I've used myself and teach inside my coaching program, condensed into one short, actionable guide that you can implement straight away. You can grab your copy at the link in the show notes or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, the word guide, and I'll send it straight to you. If you were to give some practical advice to somebody on the story they tell themselves about their own life,
yeah,
where might you suggest they focus?
For me, I think a goal without a vision is really tough. And I think a lot of people set out with goals at the start of the year, a couple of goals, and I think that's really tough. I think create a vision for how you would love to live. And the recognition that vision is alive within you. It's not out there in the way that it appears to be. And then if that's really what you want, then it's a game of devotion. In the absence of the evidence, in the absence of when things look like they're so far removed from that, it's a game of devotion. Keep bringing your awareness to what you'd love. And that's how it then unfolds. So I think create a vision and go beyond belief. Don't set goals for what you believe is possible. Set goals for what you'd love and what you don't believe is possible. When I work
things that seem out of reach.
Yeah. Literally start when I worked with Bob Proctor in Canada, and I went to see him actually and paid him quite a lot of money because my life was just a bit upside down, and then I ended up working with him and trained with him and so on. And he talked about C-type goals. There's goals where you've done it before. There's goals where you believe it's possible, and then there's things that you'd really love that you've no idea how you're going to achieve. And then it's about really fusing yourself with that. But one of my first conversations with him, I was standing in a room with him and a guy, Doug, and we were talking. He was talking to Doug about cars, and Bob turned to me and said, "Are you into cars, Rob?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't describe myself as a petrol head, but I quite like cars." And he said, "What's your dream car?" And I said, "Well, I had Range Rovers in the past. I'd like another Range Rover." And he said, "Have you made a decision that he said, "What do you drive at the moment?" And then he said, "Have you made a decision you're having a Range Rover?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, I don't have the money for one yet." And he said, "What the hell has the money got to do with the decision?" He said, "The money's not relevant." And I said, "Well, of course the money's relevant. How can I decide to buy a Range Rover if I've not got the money?" He said, "The money's not relevant until you've made a decision. Make the decision, and only then is the money relevant." And it was one of the best lessons of my life. Why would you worry about the money for something you've not decided on? And it was so cool. And then he put me on the spot. He said, "So do you want a Range Rover?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you going to make a decision?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "So you decided you're having a Range Rover?" I said, "Yes." He said, "When?" And I thought, and he was my mentor at the time.
This is smart goals. We're working.
Yeah, and it was more, Bob was good at that whole dancing, and so he said, and so he put me on the hook, or I put myself on the hook, and he said, "Okay, when?" And I said, "A year." And he went, "No, 6 months." And so 5 months later, I was driving a new Range Rover. But had I left to my own devices, the money would have got in the way of the decision.
Yes.
Circumstances get in the way of people's decisions. My advice would be create a vision for what you love and then decide that that's going to be your experience.
Just to delve a little bit deeper, when you made the decision to get the Range Rover, what happened for the Range Rover to become the reality within 5 months?
Well, looking back, I think there was definitely an element of feeling accountable. And the concept, Bob he was very loving and caring, but he was quite intimidating to work with, So he didn't tolerate any excuses really. I remember when I worked with him, I said to him a couple of months in, I said, "Bob, I'm applying all this and I understand it, but I'm not really seeing shift in my life." And he went, "Well, you don't understand it then." And I said, "Well, no, I do understand it." He said, "No, you don't. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation." So what was your question? Sorry, Colin.
What happened to enable you to get the Range Rover? So you decided you were going to get it.
Yeah.
But for somebody to picture how this might play
Yeah.
out for them. So if somebody's listening to this and they've decided, I want to have that 3-bedroom house because I have a child on the way next year, they must decide they're going to do it, not the fact that they can't afford a 50 grand deposit because the house is worth 250k.
Yeah. So I identified as the Range Rover owner. I took ownership in the mind as being the Range Rover owner. And of course, that's where the ego doesn't want to do that. It's not safe. The ego works on belief and memory. So the ego goes, no, that's delusional. You can't go there without the evidence. Whereas it's not how reality works. So I became moved to be the Range Rover owner, and then I told myself a story about my business and so on that followed that, and everything just seemed to unfold. Yeah.
I won't mention which guest this was, but I mentioned you were coming on today, and he used to look at your website, and he was telling me a story prior that linked to some of what we're talking about, where his fiance was pregnant. They've now had their child.
Right.
Happy, healthy, amazing. And there were some concerns very early on from a medical perspective about her health and the health of the fetus.
Yep.
And throughout that journey, they would speak about how she is happy, healthy, strong.
Yes.
And they were keywords that they always came back to, almost anchors that they would repeat to each other. And they weren't praying, but they were speaking about this every night before bed. And that is what came to transpire.
Yes.
And they joked that she almost enjoyed her pregnancy. Whereas at the very start, with the news from the medical team, the anxiety, the fear was so high. And I was voice noting my friend today, and we'll keep it anonymized who it is, but he was like, I would love for you to share that with Rob as a link to a lot of what he talks about.
Yeah.
And he made that their reality.
Yes. Yes.
By discussing it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And because the mind is just so consciousness, awareness, love, I am, call it whatever you will, is all potential. And then the mind is the filter for that potential. And we're literally filtering out options. So when we say the baby's healthy, the baby's happy, we're filtering out all other possibilities. The question is, in the absence of the evidence, are we able to stay true to that? You know, and one of the things I learned from Bob was he said, if you go to the doctor, accept the diagnosis. Like if a doctor says you've got cancer, accept that you've got cancer, but don't accept the prognosis unless it's in line with what you want to experience. Because the prognosis is just the doctor giving you their view. Bob's brother, I'll not bore you with the story too much, but Bob's brother's wife's got cancer years ago, and he phoned Bob and said, "What will I do?" And he said, "The doctor's told Margaret that she's got," I think it was Margaret, only a few months to live, and said, "First thing, get rid of the doctor." So you want a doctor that's committed to her living, not committed to her dying. He said, and then start to imagine and tell a story that's in harmony with your preference. And she was cancer free within months.
I know you do some pro bono work with people who have like long-term critical illness that they're struggling with. What have you learned about that population?
About that population?
About those people in particular. So
I mean, it's a delicate and sensitive subject, and but sometimes it's not about what we want to hear or need to. What's the easiest way to frame this? Because I'm sensitive and compassionate, but we don't. Who we essentially are doesn't have cancer or disease. We have a story about it, and then we create an experience based on our story. So it's a question of making a choice, but it can be very challenging. Physical pain, physical illness, disease, and sickness. It's very challenging in the face of the experience and the circumstances to tell a story that's completely polar to that, because the mind-body complex is invested in prepare for the worst, whilst hoping for the best, and we're then in conflict. There's a guy in America that I did a bit of work with a few years ago who's in the same field as me, and he was speaking to somebody who said, I've got a chronic illness. And it wasn't cancer. He said, I've got a chronic illness. I've had it for 20 years. And he was a bit more brutal than I might be. He said, no, you don't have a chronic illness. he says you've got an illness, you've got the experience of an illness, and then you've got a chronic story.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal to hear when you've been suffering for 20 years.
That's right.
But it's like we are infinite in potential. We are creators, and the more aware we are of that, the more we can live in harmony with our nature. And we're here for a finite experience. We know that, but it's about optimizing it.
Yeah. One of your client testimonials is about a lady that had long COVID.
Yes.
And
yeah.
she was explaining that I can't possibly go on this next holiday that I've got booked with my kids.
Yeah.
And you almost said to her, well, you are going on holiday with your kids. And that sounds, again, somebody like, how on earth did that come to pass? But these things keep happening. So it is challenging on the logical level because it's awareness, it's not logic.
Yeah, logic and reason are based on, typically based on the past. They're helpful tools, but not to run our life by. And she'd suffered with long COVID for a long time, and she tried everything to get rid of it, and like literally everything. And she said, I'm at wit's end. It's another holiday coming around, skiing. We used to love skiing. It's another skiing Easter holiday coming around with the kids, and it looks like my husband's going to go on his own with the boys. And I just said, what would tell me about what would imply you'd had a great holiday? And we just I took her in the mind to telling her friends, sitting having coffee with a friend, sharing photographs about what an amazing holiday they'd had. So nothing to do with getting rid of long COVID, nothing to do with getting rid of a problem, and everything to do with having had an experience which implied that she didn't have a problem.
Yes.
So she took her awareness away from the problem, gave her awareness to what she would love and to her preference. And she phoned me, I don't know how many weeks later it was, said skis are all waxed up and all the rest of it. And she went away on holiday. She's just cleared up, gone in a matter of weeks. Same with, I've got a client who had chronic eczema all his life, and he used to bandage his legs to go to work, and for decades, and been trying to get rid of it, tried all sorts. And I said to him, "Do you have a garden?" And he looked at me, he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you have grass?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you cut the grass?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you ever wear shorts?" "No, never. Not since he was a boy. Too embarrassed." I said, "If you didn't have eczema and it was the summer and you were cutting the grass, would you wear shorts?" He said, "I'd love that." I said, "Just imagine cutting your grass, wearing shorts in the summer." Eczema cleared up in 2 weeks, never been back.
What do you think's happening there?
What we give our awareness to creates our experience. And our nature is health, wealth, and abundance. Take your awareness off the problem, and the problem looks after itself.
Yeah, because one of the core tenets that I write down anytime I listen to your stuff or read a LinkedIn post is be, do, have.
Yeah.
So in order for him to have no issue with eczema, he had to be somebody that could experience the cutting the grass with the shorts on in the summer.
Yes.
But first came the fact that he had awareness of that's who he wanted to be. Yeah,
so he had the issue or the problem, if you like, and then from that was born a desire to not have it. And then for a long time, he'd been trying to get rid of the problem by giving his awareness and focus to the problem, and therefore it just continued to exist in his experience. Because what we give our awareness to has to exist in our experience. So the desire was to be free from eczema, but his focus had been in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Same in business. Our desire is to have more sales, but we go in every day and we say, "Oh, there's not enough sales." Well, yeah. And so I just took him to what it would imply that he didn't have it, and he went in the mind, imagined himself, and started to identify as that version of him, smelling the grass, seeing himself, feeling the sun, seeing himself cutting the grass.
I've heard you say before that when you moved from business coaching into your current realm, you didn't necessarily want to do it. How would you explain that?
I think for me, at the time there was I was aware that I'd stumbled upon the truth about our nature and all the rest of it, and it's not common currency. And I was I guess for me at the time, it was kind of fear of being judged for being a madman. But equally, I felt that through my own journey, the whole of my journey was leading me to this point. All of my research and studying and understanding, quantum physics and psychology and spirituality and all the rest of it. And it all culminated in coming into the non-dual understanding. And then there was just a recognition that actually, now that I know what I know, I have to teach this. And I just have to get over my fears. And I think that's the thing, Colin, when we're faced with a challenge, it seems like madness to take our awareness off the challenge and onto our preferences. It's like that feels like it's being
I'm ignoring the threat.
Delusional. And it's never really about ignoring circumstances. It's never about denying circumstances or pretending they're not there. But it is about giving our awareness and our focus start to identify with our preference.
Yeah, in really layman's terms, shifting away from focusing on the negative and the threat towards the positive and the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a helpful
a
little bit of lingo to get somebody there.
And from a more, come away from this understanding and just take it into a more materialist paradigm. It's like, people talk about the benefits of positive thinking. And yeah, there are. It's much better to think positively than negatively, for sure. But I'm more interested in, why is positive thinking work? Then you go up, or you keep going up a layer, and then it gets really exciting.
Yeah. What would be one or potentially two really practical tasks or questions you would leave the listeners with for them to consider off the back of listening to us for the last hour?
Can you repeat the question, Colin?
What would you want to leave them with? What would you like them to do? To get closer to this abundant, happy, healthy life?
Yeah. I would say, of all the things, I would say recognize your feelings are your best friend. They're your emotional sat-nav, and they're not designed to be acted upon or turned on or turned down or switched off. Designed to support you to give your awareness to your preferences. And this game of life is one of literally living our best life from love and abundance, and seeing that at an ultimate level, there's only love. We all share the same being. When you look into someone else's eyes, which behind those eyes is the same consciousness, the one same consciousness. We're all individual expressions of that one consciousness, and I think the recognition of that it just makes for a harmonious life.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with a friend the other day. There was three of us, and one of them was being quite negative about the way somebody else was behaving. And I was in a headspace at the time where I said, but from his perspective, he's doing that because of this. And it actually really helped the conversation.
Yes.
Where they stopped being critical of that other person.
Yes.
And it took me to be in that headspace to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And we'll maybe talk about that off camera, but I wouldn't always do that in normal circumstances, but I'm trying to do that more. So understanding why that person is that way, I'm just trying to walk a mile in their shoes very quickly to appreciate where they're coming from. And it helped me to remove bitching and moaning and negativity and perhaps allow that person to be seen more for their motives not being negative. They're maybe expressing them in a way that you're not happy with, but they're not doing it to try and hurt you.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And I think one of the expressions of this understanding is compassion. We can't help but be more compassionate for others. And also the recognition that we're experiencing others through our lens. So it's take the plank out of your road,
That's right.
Take the plank out of your own eye, or so we're always experiencing others through our own
and
lenses.
It's a bit of a woke term, and I'm certainly never be accused of being woke on this podcast, but lived experience, and people's lived experience does shape how they see and do things. So like how somebody votes at the ballot box is largely shaped by how they were socialized, their lived experience and their expectations and some of their values.
Yes.
In the same way, how somebody maybe responds to being pushed by somebody or shouted at by somebody will differ based on their lived experience, maybe if it's happened to them before, and they use that past to do that.
Yes.
We're trying to transcend that and use our awareness to show how we might react to these things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that can be really powerful, if some of your listeners were up for it as an exercise, is notice in any given day how many what I would call attack thoughts that you have, where you're attacking your own desires. Your mind is giving you ideas and thoughts about why you can't have what you want, or how judgmental you are of others. Just notice how many attack thoughts you have, and just that awareness of those just supports you to start to bringing them to the light of awareness supports you to have fewer of them.
Yes, once we become aware that we're having those attack thoughts, we can reduce the number that we have, and we can almost catch ourselves before we bring that up, because to then express those is creating negative energy, negative vibrations, negative frequency for those around us and ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. So the more we recognize, the more we become the observer of our thoughts, the more we are in a position to choose them. Whereas when we're identified with them and we're caught up and entangled in circumstances, we just go on an endless roller coaster of more of the same.
Yeah, and we want to get off that roller coaster. And I think we've done some work today, Rob, on getting people off that roller coaster,
well, hopefully, yeah,
and finding some of these more abundant, happier, healthier thoughts. I suspect it's an episode that people will listen back to a couple of times with their notepad to make sure that they've got bits and pieces. But I'm sure they're going to want to continue the conversation with you. Where should they head towards to learn a bit more, Rob?
Well, that's a good question. You find me on LinkedIn. I've got a website, robertbegg.com. It's a long time since I looked at it. But that's really the places to find me.
Both those will be linked in the show notes. Thank you to you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.